Milwaukee Bucks find themselves third in the Eastern Conference thus far this season. They're behind the Philadelphia 76ers and behind the Brooklyn Nets. Look, if you would have told me the Nets were going to go out and get James Harden, I would have definitely said the Nets are probably going to be number one in the Eastern Conference with KD and Kyrie both coming back. The Philly thing is interesting, but Joel Embiid has been playing out of his mind. To me, he's right there in the conversation as the most valuable player in the league. Tobias Harris has stepped his game up. Ben Simmons has taken his defensive game to the next level. So the Bucks find themselves at number 3. It's not an awful place to be, but it's just not a place that Milwaukee had grown accustomed to being since Giannis has been in MVP mode the last few years. The Bucks have pretty much been number one the entire regular season. They're not that team anymore. If you're a Bucks fan, should you be alarmed? For me, not as much, because look, I mean, the Nets got 3 All-Stars, 2 definitely Hall of Famers, possibly 3. And then you talk about Joel Embiid playing out of his mind. This is one of the greatest talents we've seen, since Hakeem Olajuwon, and he's really focused and locked in right now. Philly's got potentially 3 All-Stars. The Bucks don't got that. The Bucks got a lot of overachievers. No disrespect to Chris Middleton. He is a perennial all-star in the league, but he is an overachiever. That is the truth. Brook Lopez, at this point in his career, an overachiever. The Bucks went out and got Drew Holiday in the offseason, and to me, the trade-off is Drew Holiday will be a guy that you want around on your roster come playoff time. I do believe that. He is a guy that can go out and guard a Tobias Harris or a Kevin Durant. Go look it up. Durant says Drew Holiday guards him as well as anybody does in the league. So come playoff time, you're going to want Drew Holiday around. But for the regular season perspective, that does probably mean you're going to lose a couple more games, right? Like the Bucks have already lost 13, 14 games. They didn't do that till like March or April last year. They don't lose this many games. That's just not what they do. They run through the Eastern Conference. But when you have guys like Eric Bledsoe that's been accustomed and acclimated to that Milwaukee system under Coach Budenholzer over the last few years, they're going to win a lot of games. They're disciplined. They listen, right? Because, again, a lot of these dudes were overachievers. So I think that is the trade-off when you bring in a guy like Drew Holiday. If you're a Milwaukee fan, I do want to say, all right, this team probably won't run through the Eastern Conference like they're used to. But come playoff time, I think you will be all right. All right, the Nets make a lot of three-pointers in the regular season. But when you put Drew Holiday, attach him to Kevin Durant or Harden or Kyrie or whomever, it's going to get really interesting. So if I am a Bucks fan, I would not panic. Now, that has nothing to do with the rest of this video, because what I'm about to do is brag on myself a little bit. Giannis should be in panic mode. So I'm somebody for over a year now who has been preaching this narrative about the NBA. This does not factor in with the NFL. Let's be clear about that. Just the NBA. Kevin Durant signing with the Brooklyn Nets with a torn Achilles, to me, changed the direction of basketball. We obviously knew that this is a star-driven league, but KD, to me, took it to a new level about a year or so ago. What do I mean by that? The Nets were willing to sign KD with a torn Achilles, coming off of that last run with the Warriors, in which he injured himself in the finals again. They signed him with a torn Achilles. You want to know why? There are no more Kevin Durant's growing on trees. You take KD a year off of an injury, he's that damn good. And by the way, look at the Nets this year. It clearly was worth it. KD has been balling out, right? Now you got a 3-headed monster. Why do I bring KD into this conversation? Hear me out. If Giannis, knock on wood, injured himself tomorrow, let me ask you a question. Would you not sign him? Like, let's say Giannis tore his ACL tomorrow. Who's going to not sign a guy that's 6'10", 6'11", with his workout regimen, his athleticism, his drive, and just will coming from nothing to something? You don't think Giannis, and also where technology has went and where doctors have been able to take science, you don't think Giannis would be good to go 8, 12 months down the line? You don't, because I do. Why do I bring all these things up? There was no incentive, in my honest opinion, for Giannis to sign that 5-year, $228 million contract extension with Milwaukee in December, right before the season. I thought it was a dumb career move. I just thought it was a bad move. If you have plans on staying in Milwaukee, and this goes for Bradley Beal as well, as his team continues to struggle out east as well, the Wizards, there is no incentive for all-stars of that caliber, of that yoke, to sign extensions. Now, if you're a B-level player in the league, go get your bread. If the opportunity opens up for you to go get your money, if you got a history of injuries, go get your bread. But when you're of that yoke, of Giannis's yoke, I mean, you're in the MVP conversation every year, you don't have to sign a contract a year ahead of time. All you're doing is showing your loyalty to your team, but the problem is you make your team not have to be loyal to you. Check out Damian Lillard right now, lighting it up this year. He ain't had an all-star teammate in Portland in almost a decade. He ain't had an all-NBA player in almost a decade. Nothing. And I love CJ McCollum, but he ain't been an all-star. So Giannis could have waited, and if he really wanted to stay in Milwaukee, he could have signed that same contract, actually a couple more dollars. He could have signed it after this year. This offseason, he could have straight up said, as a free agent, let me go see what Miami talking about. Let me go see what some of the other teams that got cap room, New York. Let's see what they're talking about. Okay, that's cool. I want to stay in Milwaukee. That way you keep the pressure on the Bucks throughout this season to go get you some help. LeBron does it all the time. People clown him for them, those 2-year deals he did in Cleveland, or definitely in Cleveland, which gave him the opportunity to opt out and test his free agency. It's smart business because you're still going to go sign Giannis even if the reason why you sign is to protect yourself, right? When you're of that yoke, top 5, top 10 in the league, you don't need to protect yourself. The Nets just showed you that with Kevin Durant a year or so ago. They signed KD off of literally what's known as the worst injury in the NBA. That Achilles is a no-no. You don't even want to bring up that word too often, right? They signed KD anyway, meaning the Bucks would have signed Giannis had he injured himself this season anyway, or even with an injured, torn ACL, whatever. They would have signed him. He could have waited it out and tested out the market, and I guarantee you, we would be talking about Giannis right now. We'd be talking about the Bucks right now if they were third in the Eastern Conference, not as good as what we've seen them in the past, and Giannis is about to go into free agency. Can you imagine the pressure on that Bucks organization, to go out and get that brother another all-star caliber player, to maybe trade Chris Middleton, maybe put a couple other pieces together, do whatever it takes, because if you lose Giannis, if you're in Milwaukee, you go back to irrelevancy immediately. I don't care who else you bring in. You're irrelevant. You go from relevant every year to irrelevant, a la the Cleveland Cavaliers. Check out what Cleveland's doing now. They don't know what the hell to do. If you're Giannis, you blew it. Your team blew it. You should have trusted the work that you put in every offseason and played this thing out. If you wanted to stay in Milwaukee, fine. But do it under your terms. Keep the pressure on these organizations to commit to you as much as you've committed to the game of basketball. He blew it signing an extension, and now he just has to hope and pray Milwaukee as an organization wants to win as bad as him, because I'm looking at that Bucks team right now. They're not winning a championship. I do believe they'll be better come playoff time. Like I said, with Holiday in the mix nowadays, he's a guy that can literally take somebody else out of a game. But I still don't think they're going to be able to get through the Sixers and the Nets. I don't. Catch full new episodes of FERRO's music-based platform every day only on YouTube at It's Mr. Taliaferro. You can also find clips, updates, giveaways, and more on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, also at It's Mr. Taliaferro. For all basketball fans, make sure you tune in to FERRO's daily highlights, reports, and commentary on YouTube at HoopsFerro, and even more updates on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at HoopsFerro as well.